All right, hi everyone. Welcome to Believe in Bills, presented by FanDuel. I'm Adam Benigni of WGRZ TV, Sports Talk Live, Buffalo. Sal Maiorana of the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle with us as always. Wednesday, the Fieldhouse as the 3-0 Bills get ready for the 0-3 New Orleans Saints in Orchard Park on Sunday. Sal, how you doing today?
I am good, Adam. How are you?
I'm doing just fine, thanks. All right, so as we would typically do on a Wednesday, let's get up to speed in terms of the injuries. No Ed Oliver, no Matt Milano dealing with the ankle and the pec, respectively. But Spencer Brown all of a sudden is on there with a calf. What's the latest that you can tell us?
Yeah, that was a new one that came out of he hadn't said anything about Spencer Brown after the game or on Friday when McDermott last spoke to the media. So that was kind of a surprise. I asked him, did it happen in the game? And he said yes. So we'll see. He didn't practice today. I saw Spencer walking off the field. Who knows? You can't tell. It's a calf injury. But that'll be something to monitor because, their offensive line has been the most continuous unit on the team. He's the only player, Adam, in the last 2 years who has missed a game. He missed the Kansas City game last year. No one else has missed a start since the start of 24. So that'll be something to watch. And if he can't go, it's Ryan Vandermark who's going to have to play at right tackle.
All right, so that's certainly something to watch. Any sort of indication on Oliver and Milano? I mean, I just heard McDermott say they were kind of trending in the right direction, or one of his usual, kind of classifying as a positive developments and progress that they're making. But any indication one way or another on either of them?
No, he just said they're heading in the right direction, and that direction could be a minimal improvement. I would tend to think they're going to keep those guys out again.
Yeah.
Look, the Saints are 0-3. You're never going to underestimate any team in the NFL, right? Crazy things happen, but I think the Bills are in a position this week where they could probably hold those two players out. One more game. This New Orleans offense really hasn't done a whole lot that's going to worry you, for instance, like the Ravens did or even the Dolphins. So I think the prudent play would be to keep them down. You've got a division opponent in the Patriots coming here next week. Try to get them ready for that game. So I would expect they're going to sit out again.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. That's a luxury. I mean, off to the start they are, and with we've talked favorable schedule since it dropped back in the spring, and now you can see they have the luxury of not pushing. We don't know the specific nature or where they are in terms of coming back from those injuries, but your point is well taken. They don't necessarily have to push it given the opponent this week, who we'll get into in just a little bit. But some of the other, reasons for success, not only this season, but going back to last year as well. I think we got to talk turnovers here, don't you?
Sure do.
They're making, this is historic what's going on. And there are a lot of components to it. But I mean, they had 32 takeaways in the regular season last year, led the NFL 2024 plus 24 turnover margin. We all know the significance of that. And there's components to that. You had a turnover-dependent defense. It's kind of picked up in that area. But you have a quarterback who earlier in his career, I think there's so many facets to what Josh Allen and elements to his game that he's elevated to get to the MVP level that he's at right now. But I would argue one of, if not the biggest, right, has been his ability to limit turnovers. I mean, had a total of 8 last season. I mean, and that is just, you can't overstate how critical that's been to this team's success, I guess is my point.
There's no doubt. I mean, teams typically, I guess historically you could go back, it's about 70% when you win the turnover battle. Now, that's not even counting when you keep it even. And that's the string that the Bills are on right now. It's 25 straight games where they haven't lost the turnover battle. People get that confused. They haven't won it 25 straight, but they've kept it even or won it in the 25. They've won it 19 times, and they've been even in 6 of them. So to not lose it, and I think the last time they lost the turnover battle was the last game of 23 when they went down to Miami and won that game, still won the game. That was the last time they were on the wrong end of the turnover margin. I think I saw a number this week. The offense has gone 574 snaps without turning the ball over. It's just unbelievable. It goes back I think it's 8 straight games where the offense has not committed a turnover. That's unheard of in the NFL. You got to remember, Adam, this league, teams coach their players on creating turnovers, right? They're trying to get the punch outs and the interceptions. It's part of coaching every day in this league, and the Bills have somehow been able to avoid those mistakes. Now, they caught a couple breaks along the way, right? I mean, they fumbled, I don't know what it was, 5 or 6 times last year and recovered their own fumbles. James Cook had a fumble the other night. The Bills were able to recover it. So there's a little bit of luck involved with that too, but it's just astonishing. And then, like we talked about with Allen, he has just become a different quarterback. We've talked about it over and over and over, but one of the biggest things that has helped him ascend to where he is just his patience. He now recognizes that he doesn't have to push the ball down the field and throw the ball in harm's way like he did even as late as 2023, right? He was still doing a lot of that in 2023, 4 years into his superstardom. And then last year, we really started to see that change with Joe Brady coaching that in him to just take what they're giving you. We will get these wins right down the field if you just do that. And we've seen that in the first 3 games this year. The other night, Adam, his average depth of target, ball flying down the air, was 3.9 yards. That's the second lowest of his career. Believe it or not, it was the Dolphins game here last year, which was 3.7. That was his lowest. That just indicates to you that Miami, division opponent, they are going to put the top on the defense. They don't want to have you beat them, especially Josh Allen, and everything is going to be underneath. And he has taken it and he's run with it. And that's why that's one of the reasons why they haven't turned the ball over.
Don't you think too? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I think his last interception was week 16 against the Patriots last year. I had looked that up, and I think, but that's what we're talking about here, right? But you look at the way and how efficient the offense is, and that the quick passing game when it needs, and how adaptable it is, and how, in some respects, how aggressively he plays the game, how quickly he gets it out, right? I mean, it's the efficiency. You watch that, and that number you just gave in terms of depth of target. But he's got so many options. The receiving core is diverse. Now, whether they can separate or not, that's one of the discussion points, right? But, I mean, it seems like he continues to elevate. And if that's the type of game plan he needs to be able to execute, he can do it at such a lethal and efficient level and just win games that way. And you're talking 30-plus point production.
Yeah, I mean, they're scoring points. So they got 102 points. They're 4th most in the league. So it certainly hasn't affected their productivity. And you look at the skill set of this receiver group, Adam, it is conducive to that short passing game. I mean, that's what Khalil Shakir does best. It's certainly what Elijah Moore does best, is find holes in a zone, run after catch. He made one of the biggest plays of the week in the game against Miami. They're trying to run the clock out. They've got a 2nd and 16. Thanks to the Kincaid penalty, they needed a play made. Allen just threw a short ball over the middle, and Moore ran 20 yards or whatever it was for a 30-yard gain, put the game away. Those are the kind of things that they're doing. I looked it up. Their yards after catch, Adam, they got 432 yards after catch. That's 2nd most in the league. You go back a few years ago, that was one of the number one things when you looked at Josh Allen's stats, how small the yards after catch were. And why was that? Because they were throwing the ball downfield. And if you recall, he didn't always throw the ball super accurate, meaning throwing guys open, right? Getting it out in front of them so the guy could catch it and then make a play and gain more yards. It was usually wherever that ball was caught, generally is where the play ended. That is completely flipped in 2025. He's throwing the ball short, and these guys are breaking tackles, and they're getting down the field and gaining yards after catch. I guess in the end, Adam, it doesn't matter how you get the yards, right? As long as you get the yards. And they've just found a new way to do it with this short passing game.
Now, the other component to this is the defense, and let's just go into that a little bit, right? I mean, Terrell Bernard's interception against the Dolphins kind of epitomizes how they're able to kind of pull this off in key situations, and certainly Ed Oliver's forced fumble against the Ravens, right? Derrick Henry in the opener is another. I mean, there's 2 examples of that. Massive plays. in 3 games. So again, it's a defense that has its issues, which we'll get into in just a second here. But I'm not going to say turnover dependent at this point, but they've been able to capitalize in that area.
Yeah, they've got 3 turnovers so far, 1 in each game. You said the Henry fumble, 3:06 to go, changed the game. They got the fumble on Fields in the first quarter of a 7-0 game, made it a 2-score game because they capitalized with a field goal. So that was a big, whenever you get points off a turnover, it's a big play. And then obviously last week, the Bernard pick basically sealed the game for the Bills. So they've had 1 in each game. They've all been important. Every turnover generally is important. And you're right. The Bills have lived and died. They're not saying live and died, but they certainly have excelled in getting the ball, getting takeaways from the offense. You can't keep living like that all the time, though, right? I mean, those things, puck luck, we call it in hockey, right? That can change on a dime. The Bills need to start getting more stops on defense as opposed to getting the takeaways. They need to start forcing more punts. I think I remember last year I was talking about how few punts the Bills had forced. I think they were like one of the worst teams in the league at number of punts that were forced, because they got 32 takeaways. That helped, end 32 drives. But I think this season there needs to be more of an emphasis on just getting off the field on 3rd down and making a team punt, because that's the stuff you can build consistency with. Turnovers are a lot of luck. Bernard made a great play. I'm not going to call that luck. But I mean, Joey Bosa stripping Justin Fields when he was taken off up the middle, a little bit of a break there. And the Derrick Henry fumble, same thing. I mean, although I shouldn't say that because he's fumbled in each of the last 2 games. He's starting to have a problem. So maybe that wasn't so much luck. But those are things that really come and go. And I think Sean McDermott knows that more than anybody. It's great when you get them. But, man, if you're not getting them, you got to get off the field some other way.
No, absolutely no question about that. And what was Miami, 10 of 13 or 10 of 15, excuse me.
10 of 15.
On 3rd down. So those are the kind of numbers that those will come. They're going to cause problems as the season progresses, and certainly if you get into postseason situations. And that 3rd down defense was a problem last year, and they have not solved it to this point this year. So that's something certainly to pay attention to, despite the team's success. Another component.
And what's frustrating about that too, Adam, because I asked McDermott about this today. You look at the play-by-play sheet, and the defense, for the most part, has done a pretty good job on 1st and 2nd down. I mean, just the fact that Miami had to get to the 3rd down 15 times indicates that the Bills were doing pretty good on the early downs. So when you get a team in 3rd down, you should be able, in some cases, when it's 3rd and 7 or more, which the Bills had, there were 5 or 6 of those plays, I think 5 or 6 in the Miami game alone, where you're supposed to win in that situation, and they just weren't doing it. So, you play well on early downs, but you've got to finish it. You've got to finish the drive and get off the field. And I think they will start to get better at that, certainly with these teams coming up here. The Saints aren't very good. I'm not too concerned about them. New England, I think they'll be able to get off the field on 3rd down. But down the road, when you start playing better teams again, that's going to be something they got to clean up.
Right. Exactly. Excellent point, and one that I was trying to make as well as the season progresses here. But again, favorable schedule, and to their credit, they're off to a 3-0 start. One player I wanted to ask you about before we get to just a brief note on the Saints, Dalton Kincaid, right? I mean, here's a guy that they called out in the offseason to become more durable and to elevate his game. To this point, 2nd on the Bills in receiving, 13 receptions on 16 targets, 151 yards, a couple of touchdowns in 3 games. Your thoughts on where things stand with him right now?
Yeah, I liked what I've seen so far with him. He's catching the balls that are thrown to him. He said 13 out of 16 targets. So last year, you can't pin it all on Kincaid. There were numbers that showed that Allen was having a tough time getting the ball to Kincaid. It was like, I don't know, it was kind of a low percentage of catches to targets. Now, he had a couple drops in there, but there were times where Josh was having a tough time. They just weren't on the same page last year. I think part of that was the injury. They lost a lot of momentum after he got hurt. That was definitely part of it. This year, they seem to be more locked in. I asked Josh specifically last week after the game, because it seemed like they tried to get Kincaid involved early. And he ended up being their leading receiver. And, he relied on the same old, I'm going to throw the ball where the defense takes me. But I think they are trying to get the ball to him. They realize this guy can be a weapon. This is what they drafted him for, is to be a guy who could get downfield and make plays. And I still wish that they would try to get him down the field more instead of the little dink and dunk stuff. But it's the way defenses have played them. And as we spoke about early in the show, this is what Josh has got to do now. He's got to stay patient and take what the defense is giving them. And that's what they're giving them, is short passes. Kincaid's a part of that. What I like most about Kincaid this year, Adam, is that he has become a serviceable blocker. He wasn't a good blocker his first 2 years. That wasn't something that he excelled at in college. He was basically a tight end in a receiver's body in college. And that's what the Bills, I think, drafted him for. They figured that Dawson Knox would be their guy in 2 tight ends to be a blocker. Now they've got Jackson Hawes. But you know what? You watch Kincaid block this year on running plays. He's blocked pretty well. And that's important because there are times when he's the only tight end on the field. You don't want to keep giving your tendency of every time we have 2 or 3 tight ends, we're going to run the ball. Sometimes you want one tight end on the field and you want to run the ball, and that tight end's got to block. And he's been pretty good in the blocking part of it, that's a good thing to see.
I want to follow up on a point you just made about kind of the nature of this offense and the way defenses are trying to play them. With the short passing game and that sort of a thing, and keeping everything underneath, taking the top off, right? Like, is that, or teams figuring out maybe that it might be working against them? Because, to what extent does it play to a strength of the Bills' offense to be able to execute the way that it is, understanding full well that this is a quarterback that can execute any type of offense that you would want him to?
Yeah, you're right, but I think teams are still just terrified of what Josh can do if he gets the ball deep. Now, I would counter that point by saying I don't know that the Bills are all that great of a deep throwing team, regardless of how strong Allen's arm is. They don't have the guys. Yeah, they don't have the guys that do those, can really excel, certainly on deep balls. But even in the intermediate range, we haven't seen anything from Josh Palmer. Well, we saw 2 nice plays from Josh Palmer. But I would say the body of work over 3 games has been a little bit light from him. I expected more. Keon Coleman had the 1 great game, and he's done basically nothing in the last 2, which is kind of typical of what he's shown. He's been very up and down. So if I'm the defense, you would think they would start bringing a safety up a little closer. And here's the other reason why you should be doing that. The Bills have run the ball great.
That's it.
And they're getting light boxes because teams are playing that 2 high shell, that 2 safety high shell, and they're almost daring the Bills to take the yardage on the ground, and they're willingly taking it. So at some point, defenses have got to start figuring out, look, they aren't going to kill us deep with the receivers they have. We need to start coming up, play the run, and be ready for the short pass. I think when that happens, you're going to need the Bills to make an adjustment then, and we'll see if they can do it.
Well, that's just it. How are teams? I'm watching, the 3-0 start and the Miami game in particular, and the efficiency of the offense and the underneath stuff, and everything that you had suggested with that, the yardage to target and all of those things. It's a telling number. Teams obviously adjust, and I think that's something that'll be interesting to see, maybe even starting this week, how defenses are going to try and play them and maybe take some of that stuff away, and obviously the run game as well. Excellent point and analysis. All right, as for the Saints, FanDuel has the line in this game, Buffalo minus 15.5, over a 2-touchdown favorite, as they should be, against an 0-3 team. Losses to Arizona 20-13, San Francisco 26-21, and then a shellacking against the Seattle Seahawks 44-13. How would you characterize this opponent? Is this just a team that's finding its way under a new head coach in Kellen Moore?
Yeah, I think so. People were saying that, the Saints are the worst team in the league. I totally disagree with that. They had a horrible week last week. They went on the road for the first time. Seattle's a tough place to play, and that game just completely got away from them. They had 2 major mistakes on special teams, a touchdown return, and then they had another one that was for 60 yards that set up a short field and a touchdown. it was just a disaster. They were down 21-0 6 minutes into the game. You throw everything out the window at that point. So the first two games, you look at those, Adam, they played the Cardinals and the 49ers, both at home, lost both of them, but they were one-score games all the way through. In fact, I think in both games, the Saints had possession of the ball with a chance to maybe take the lead and didn't get it done. So I'm going to stop short of calling the Saints the worst team in football. They had a bad week last week. That's usually dangerous in the NFL, right? When a team plays as bad as they played in all three phases last week, you can pretty much expect they're going to come back, guns a-blazing in their next game. Now, obviously, it's a big test for them. Coming to Buffalo to play the Bills, where they haven't lost in almost 2 years, that's a tall task for the Saints. So I don't think they're going to come in here and win, but I think the Bills would be very wise not to overlook this team. And I talked to 3 different guys in the locker room a little while ago, and believe me, that's the belief. They know that in this league, records do not matter. Generally, they do not matter. I think they'll be ready to play a good game against the Saints.
To what extent McDermott's always been good on that. But, do you get a sense between Sean McDermott and the leadership that Josh Allen provides them and the success they've had and all of those things? The fact that it's just cliche when you talk about trap game or overlooking an opponent.
Yeah.
But, I think the Bills are uniquely qualified in that aspect in the way in terms of their approach, don't you?
I think that's trap games that's total bullshit, Adam. There's no such thing as a trap game in the NFL. There might be a trap game in college football. When your homecoming opponent comes in and you're supposed to beat them by 5 touchdowns, you could call that a trap game because you could certainly fall asleep if you're Oklahoma playing, Oklahoma A&M or somebody. But in the NFL, there's no such thing as a trap game. Every game, I wish fans would understand this, that every game is hard to win. There's just no one-offs in this league. Nothing is easy. Yeah, the Jets looked like a really easy game for the Bills. Okay, they won by 27 points. It was still, there were things that had to happen in that game for Buffalo to win it by that margin. That's the case every week. So don't be talking about trap games in the NFL. I don't care if they're going to go play the Eagles the following week. The week before is not a trap game. That's a game you got to win. So you better be ready to play and win the game that you're supposed to win. Yeah, there are games you're supposed to win. I'll give you that. But there's no such thing as, oh, yeah, this is no problem. We're going to walk right through this team. See you next week. Doesn't happen in the NFL.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt is a game they're supposed to win, and I expect they will. So that's going to put a wrap on this Wednesday edition. Believe in Bills. Sal Maiorana, Rochester Democrat and Chronicle from Orchard Park and Bills Fieldhouse as they put a wrap on practice on this Wednesday edition, getting ready for the 1 o'clock kickoff, Bills and Saints, Sunday at Highmark Stadium. I'm Adam Benigni, WGRZ TV and Sports Talk Live Buffalo. Thanks for being with us here on this edition and other editions of Believe in Bills.